We're going to call the meeting to order, and very excited to have this presentation tonight on open choice.
Thank you. That was easy. So we are really excited to be able to have this conversation about open choice tonight. So Lynn reminded me that when we were chatting before the meeting, we started these conversations 4 years ago, that we started talking about open choice and about Guilford participating in open choice. It has been delayed multiple times for multiple reasons. We slowed down because of a pandemic. Didn't think it was the right time to be talking about bringing more students from other communities until we learned about the pandemic and got our hands around it. We then realized that the legislation did not allow us to participate in open choice. Guilford is part of the Learn RESC, and right now Learn and the districts assigned to Learn are not participating in open choice. So we needed to go and change law so that we could have the opportunity to discuss participation in open choice. We have in large part Sean Scanlon to thank for that. One phone call to Sean, and he put it in as an amendment into not this past session, but the one before that, to move the change in legislation forward. So for the purposes of open choice, we now partner with ACES, and we're part of the New Haven group. I know that we've had intermittent and incomplete conversations about open choice in small groups around the district. Tonight, we have the opportunity to have two friends from ACES joining us. We've got a relatively short presentation, which is Open Choice 101, to go over exactly what open choice is, which districts currently participate with ACES, and what it would look like for us and for our community. But then more importantly, an opportunity to just have conversation. It's a workshop meeting, which means we're not bound by Robert's rules, and we can just have conversation with our guests about what open choice can look like. Remember, at this time, we are targeting students from New Haven beginning to join us in first grade in September of 24. We are likely going to ask the board to take action on this proposal by the end of this school year at a regular business meeting. And if the board chooses to do that, it then gives us a year to continue to work with ACES, to put family support systems and mechanisms in place, to talk with the teachers and the principals who will be supporting students as they begin entering our district. And we would begin entering students in a rolling fashion, starting with one small cohort, and then each year growing that cohort almost exponentially until we were covering all 13 grades. So with all of that as context and introduction, I get to introduce or reintroduce Bill Grimm, who was one of us and was one of our principals here in Guilford until he chose to leave us for ACES. I haven't forgiven him yet, and I'm only a little bit resentful. But Bill is going to just say a few words and then introduce Lynn Bailey, who's going to take us through the presentation, and then they'll both be here to have conversation with all of us. I also want to point out there's a number of our principals here tonight who are insisting on sitting in the second row, but one, you all have the opportunity to ask questions as well. This is not just the board's opportunity. So I encourage all of you to engage with our presenters as well as join us later to just be part of the conversation. So welcome back.
Thank you. Where's the best place to?
Anywhere. It's informal. Oh, except Kevin had the camera, so maybe you do need to be. While we are not live streaming the workshop meetings anymore, we thought this one was special enough that we are recording it so that we can put it to our YouTube channel so that other community members who aren't here tonight will have the opportunity to watch it over the next several months. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to see everybody. Those that I know and those that are new. It's a little surreal. It's like you go back to your old school and it sees this is smaller than it used to be, right? But it's pretty much the same. But I'm pleased to be here just to talk about open choice. I'm going to introduce the real guru for ACES of open choice, Lynn Bailey, in a second. But I think I wedged myself into this opportunity and presentation. But so I have experience with open choice. As a middle school teacher in Cheshire back in 1998, I think, at Dodd Middle School, we accepted our first open choice students. We were involved in CREC's open choice when I was in Portland. When I moved down to East Haven in 2006, we started students at my school, Deer Run, which is, I think, still the relationship that East Haven has with ACEs. So some experience, what I bring is some experience as both a teacher and an administrator with open choice and working with ACEs, and from the school side and the helping students become part of a school community and their families. So that's hopefully the support that I can bring, and questions that we can answer as planning takes place next year for getting ready for fall of 2024. So with that, I'm going to pleased to introduce Lynn Bailey, who I've known for quite a long time, even though I have only been at ACES for 2 years, but and she knows everything about open choice. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And thank you, Lynn, and I'm happy to be your data light. Just tell me when to move the slides forward.
Good evening, everybody. In your pamphlet that I gave you, you're going to have 2 different informational pieces of paper about open choice. They both are basically the same thing. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to revise because of the printing and stuff. We didn't have time to revise the whole thing. There are some towns that are not participating anymore, but we'll go through that during the presentation. We also have in here the overall every year, how many students we've had since October 1st in the programs. And you'll see ups and downs in the numbers. We started the program in 98, 99, and it has the numbers through October 1 of 22, 23. You'll also find the state funding guidelines in here, what the district will receive from the state per pupil. There is additional funding to this for any school that has 10 students or more. There's additional funding for any district that has over, I believe it's 25 students. There's additional funding, but that's on a percentage of what monies are left from the state in the choice budget, and that's split through correct. Let's see, there's correct, there's CES, and there's us that participate. And then the last piece is student profile that we haven't done since the pandemic, but we're bringing it back next year. The student profile is, we want to see how the kids are doing academically, socially, is there parent participation, stuff like that. And we do send this report. We take all the information from every district. We put it in a PowerPoint presentation for the state. So they know how well students are doing. Just to highlight a couple students that I know of. One has become a doctor through this program. Another one has become a lawyer. And then we have a lot of students that have gone into the armed services. We have a lot of nurses and, teachers. And so program does do a lot of good for a lot of students. Next one, please. So what we're going to discuss today is what is open choice, how open choice works, staff roles, timeline, lottery information, participating districts, and open choice information and contacts. Open choice is an interdistrict public school program intended to improve academics, reduce racial, ethnic, and economic isolation, and provide choice of educational programs to public students. This is also open to private school students and to parochial students. ACES manages the aspect for the Greater New Haven area, including responses to requests and concerns from districts, parents, schools, and transportation companies. So I'm the coordinator of the program. I deal with the applications, the enrollments, transportation, lotteries, verifications, and information updates. Melissa Allers, who is my cohort with this program, is the open choice liaison. She does home visits and virtual visits, school visits, and virtual visits with the schools. She attends all PPTs or as many as she can. And 504 meetings. She fosters communications with students and families and schools. She tracks student success, and one of the ways is through that student profile. She supports students, families, schools, and districts. And we do a college readiness night, and we start that with 8th grade students. And then there's our open choice secretary, Shelley Backus. She was hired about a year ago because it got too overwhelming. We couldn't keep up with everything. And she supports the open choice programs and staff, and she is responsible for all our after school activities, transportation. This is just a sample of the timeline that we use this year. So we're already past the blind lottery. We've done the placements already. We are waiting, well, today, by the 28th of April, all the forms are due back to us, whether they're accepting or declining. And then we start backfilling seats after that. We send lists to all the districts with all the new students and the existing students that are returning. Just a lot of paperwork going back and forth. Anybody that has declined for a new seat, we backfill that seat as quickly as possible. We do have until September 30th of every year to fill seats.
So it's just also important about, it's one of the reasons why we're not opening seats for this coming September. One, we want to make sure that we do this well and do it thoroughly and design for it. And two, we would be late by according to this timeline to just go ahead. So if there is a suggestion in any of the conversations that we should be doing this for this coming September, this as well as wanting to do this right and do it well are the reasons that we're targeting the September of 24.
Okay, and this is just an example of the seats that we received for this coming September with the districts. Bethany gave us one in kindergarten. Brantford gave us a bunch of seats, 33 seats. Cheshire gave us 18 seats. East Haven gave us 1 seat. And so on and so forth. Milford 13, North Brantford 20, Amity gave us 9. A total of 101 seats that we received for this coming school year for New Haven kids going out to the suburbs. Next slide. Then we have kids from the suburbs going into New Haven. New Haven cut way back on their seats this year because they're concentrating more on the magnet aspect of it. But Hill House, Wilbur Cross, Barack Obama, Celentano, East Rock, Family Academy, Monte West Hills, John S. Martinez, and Roberta Clemente, they gave us a total of 51 seats. Usually they average about 100, 125 seats.
So, which is also when we think of open choice in our participation, most people may think of New Haven students coming to Guilford schools. Guilford students, if they have an interest in New Haven schools, have an opportunity to become part of a lottery for any of those seats as well.
And we've had some Guilford students participate going to New Haven. Okay, so this is what we go through with parents as right before the application process starts, so they know what to expect. Where do I apply for open choice? We give them the website, which is aceschoicelottery.org. How many schools can I apply to? There's always 3 schools that they can apply to if there's 3 seats available, depending on what the districts give us for what grade level. And then they always get an optional choice. And what that optional choice is if they specifically wanted Guilford this year, let's say, they could write in Guilford district. Not that there's an opening, but if something does open up, sometimes the superintendents will change things around a little bit. And they might give us some more seats, or sometimes they take away seats, but mostly it's that they give us more seats, and that's why we want to offer that optional choice. Do I have to reapply each year? No, if once they're in the program, they're in the program until they graduate. The only way that they have to, that they would be taken out of the program is, in this case, if they move out of New Haven, then they would be disqualified, or if the parent decides to withdraw them. Do you have sibling preference? Yes, we do. We have two types of sibling preference. We have one, if a child is currently attending, if a sibling is currently attending in the district, and there's another sibling that applies for the same district, then there's sibling preference. There's another type of sibling preference where if you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids and you're applying for all of them all at once, and they all apply for the same district, then there's sibling preference that way. But the real preference is if you already have a child in the program and you want another child in. How do I learn about the available schools? The parents, families, schools could always contact us, or a lot of parents do research through the strategic school profiles State Department of Ed provides. How do we get our openings? In beginning of January, end of December, I send a letter to the superintendents of schools asking them, do you have openings? They could say no. They say no, okay, we just file that away. If they say yes, they have to give us what schools and what grades and how many openings. And that we ask for by February 1st. I'm pretty flexible on that, but March 1st, the application goes live at midnight, so we definitely need it before March 1st.
Remembering Guilford, our plan is that we'll be offering seats based on space available. There is no intention of adding staffing or carrying staffing that we wouldn't otherwise have for local Guilford residents. But we all know across the elementary schools, you've got classes that are large in one grade level in one neighborhood and smaller in another neighborhood. So the seats will be offered in those neighborhood grade levels where there's lower enrollment and there are seats available without adding staff to that grade level.
Is there transportation available? Yes, we do provide transportation to and from school. Okay.
With no cost to
With no
Guilford.
cost, no. We get $3,250 per child to be transported. The only thing that they don't pay for is pre-K students, which that's not going to be an issue here. And then we're always short. This year I was short by $1,500,000 and something. And we applied to the state for supplemental funds, and that's how we get reimbursed for that. I go through a whole audit. It's very tedious. But we go through the audit, and so far, we've always been reimbursed for the whole amount. Things to consider, and this is what we tell parents at the meeting, the distance from home to school, the transportation. Some of the kids could be on the bus for 2 hours one way, because they have to go throughout all of New Haven and then go out to the schools. So some of them could be up to 2 hours. The shortest run that we have is probably about 35-40 minutes, and that's from New Haven to North Haven, or real local. But New Haven's a big city, and with the traffic and everything, it's a long route.
With this change, we will now be the furthest district to the east, although I understand that our neighbors are looking at our work and are considering adding this in another community just to our east. So we will have to see if that discourages participation for New Haven families. But people are coming as far as Branford currently, and so we do expect that we will see interest.
And what I'm going to keep track of also, if we're going to add more districts around this area, contracting with a local bus company around this area, so it might not be quite as bad for they're still going to have to go into New Haven, but it might not be quite as bad.
Yep.
School setting, public schools, scholarships, New Haven has the New Haven Promise. Once the students leave New Haven, they do not get that, they cannot apply for that scholarship. So sometimes that discourages families from applying for open choice. For the most part, it doesn't. And the application process first, second, and third choice. Next one. We currently have 12 districts, 463 students, Ansonia, Bethany, Branford, Cheshire, East Haven, Milford, New Haven, North Branford, North Haven, Orange, Amity, and Woodbridge. We had Camden and we had Wallingford, which were, as you'll see in the spreadsheet, they were real big districts at one point. When superintendents change, some superintendents don't want to participate in the program for any number of reasons. So we've lost a couple. Now we're starting to possibly gain Guilford and other districts around. So our contact information, I'm Lynn Bailey, Open Choice Coordinator, and I'm also the head of regional transportation. And I also do Magnet School Parent Choice.
Time you came back on.
That one more time. And then there's Melissa Allard, who's the Open Choice Liaison, and she also is the Translation Services Coordinator. And Shelley Backus is our secretary.
And I can just bring a chair right over here for you, and so I don't know if you wanted to come up and join us as well, and we can.
Really, we don't let it. Or at least we haven't recently.
Oh, sure, he's gonna hide over there.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful. My name is Katie Fallis Tracy. I'm chair of the board, and I'm imagining a lot of us board members as well as our district leadership team here have some questions. I want to open it to the floor. Anybody? I have a couple to start with, if that helps. You talked about transportation, and Paul, I feel like you might have mentioned this in a past conversation. Help in accommodating kids who might want to participate in after-school activities or sporting events.
We do have after-school late buses
Okay,
that we call. The late bus goes out for 4:30 every day, no matter what time the event stops.
okay,
Okay, some kids are in clubs, they'd have to wait for the bus till 4:30.
yeah,
Some kids are in sports, they might have to leave the sport a little bit early. We can't keep on going back and forth. The transportation costs are astronomical.
I
As you
can
can imagine.
imagine.
Like I said, just in the transportation for the daily stuff, it's $1.5 million. You know.
And is it your sense that prevents a kid from going out for the basketball team or for a tennis team, or do districts try to work with that, or are parents able to work with that?
Yes, yes, so
All of
of
those things, okay,
we've had families in district welcome the open choice students into their home, let them sleep overnight if there's a play and it gets done late and the parents can't go out.
interesting, okay,
They welcome them into their home and they stay there overnight. They go to school with their child, and the next day they go back home in the bus in the afternoon. We've had it where parents are very involved and they'll go and get their child every day, you know, depending on what activity that they're in. I don't think it's really prevented anybody. If it in a year, if there's a handful of kids, that would be a lot.
Yeah.
That didn't
but it sounds
participate.
like there is some precedence for creative, out of the box thinking about
Yes.
supporting kids in ways that would allow them to
Absolutely.
consider participation.
I
Absolutely.
think
We also do city bus passes. I don't know if your schools are anywhere near the city lines. We do offer city bus passes, but that's up to the family to figure out, what the schedule is of the city bus, because I would never be able to keep up with it. with
Oh,
55
right.
schools that we're dealing with. And this is only for currently, it's only for the high school and middle school. The state mandates that we do it for high school students only.
Okay,
We at ACES took the stance, you know what? Middle school, they're really in a lot of activities and we're gonna provide for them, because a lot of times we could go to one school and then go to the high school first and then go to the middle school, or vice versa. Pick them both up and then go into New
Right.
Haven. The elementary schools, we're still trying to figure out how we can do that. I've been doing this since 98, 99. I started with the open choice program. It was 4 months into the program. And it's just so tricky, and the cost of transportation,
Yeah.
so phenomenal that.
Right. we're familiar.
But
It's my understanding that a lot of districts or some districts will also use some of the dollars that come in with the student attendance to then fund a late bus of their own, particularly at the high school level.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lot more flexible and a much shorter, right, rather than trying to do it for everybody. I also want to point out for the board that in the way that we're thinking of opening the doors to this, we wouldn't anticipate opening for high school student enrollment until our 3rd year. So our anticipation is that in 24, we would offer seats in a 1st grade cohort only. And so we'd be starting with a really small cohort, and we'd be making sure that we supported those students and families well. In year 2, those students would move to grade 2. We'd open up 1st grade seats behind them again, and we'd open up our first invite for 5th grade seats, a transition year where everybody's coming to Baldwin. In year 3, you'd now have students in grades 2 and 3. We'd offer 1st grade seats behind them. You'd have students in 6th grade. We'd offer 5th grade seats behind them, and we'd offer our first 9th grade opening. And then in year 4, again, so you would see us ramp up from one cohort of students in year 1 to 12 years of possible seats in year 5. It would be an exponential growth of where those seats were available. But it would allow us to spend 1 year training, 1 year keeping a really small group of 1 and doing it well, then a group of 3 and doing it well, and making sure that we grew it thoughtfully. So when you're just talking about 1st and 2nd graders in those first couple of years, this would be less of a need. It might happen at the end of a school year for special events. By the time we opened up at the high school level, we'd really need to be thinking about full participation and how we would be able to support those students and make sure that they felt encouraged to participate in after schools, not discouraged from participating in everything that we offer after regular hours.
And I was able to help, like with Cheshire. They wanted to give us more seats. They were adamant that they wanted more high school kids. So their big concern was the kids being on the bus for 2 hours. That's a long ride, and Cheshire's pretty far out, considering you got to go all the way down Route 10, and that's a nightmare in the morning in itself and in the afternoon. So what we ended up doing is we split the route in half. So they pick up in New Haven, half of New Haven on one bus, half of New Haven, and then go into Cheshire. It's really helped. I mean, their bus ride right now is maybe an hour and 15 minutes each. So that you're cutting off almost 45 minutes. So, I am willing to work with the districts as much as I can to make whatever needs to happen work. There's some instances where I just can't. My hands are tied, just like, within your district. There's some things that just can't happen. But we do try to work with the districts as much as possible to accommodate what you need.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
The national literature talks about the benefits of both the receiving schools and to the students who come. Have you done any studies in the last 20 years to look at the outcomes of the students who are taking part in this program?
Yeah, well, that's what the student profiles are for, that we do. I mean, I tried tracking the students that graduated. They move around so much. I got out of probably I think it was 45 letters that I had sent out, well, 2 years in a row. I got maybe 5 responses back. Not only do the students move, go to college, then move wherever they find a job, the families are very transient in New Haven. It might be within New Haven, but they move around so much that we just can't track them long term. But there's a few of the families that, when you start them in kindergarten, you get to know the family really well, and they'll call me and they'll say, this is what my daughter is up to, or this is what my son is up to now. And I mean, we could share some letters that I've received from families just thanking us for helping their child out, getting a better education and stuff like that. But tracking them every year, no, we have not.
Dr. Harris, I think the flip side to that is important as well. I think the literature does suggest that it may be a benefit for the New Haven students who have the opportunity to attend some of our really excellent Guilford schools, but it's also a benefit for the students who live in Guilford to have experiences with other children who don't necessarily grow up in Guilford or come from more diverse backgrounds, racial, ethnic diversity, religious diversity, all kinds of differences that will enrich our community.
But I was thinking about such things as, do students in this program graduate at a higher rate than if they had stayed? Is their attendance better in the new school system? Are their grade point averages better? Are their attitudes better? The way in which the kids themselves describe their experiences, would it be different before they got here and years after, which we can gather while they're in the program rather than after?
We have 98 to 99% of the kids in this program graduate.
Now, that is going to be higher than the graduation rate from New Haven in general, but it's important to remember that this group is self-selecting, right? And so there's a lot of variables that go into that. But I think it would allow for some really exciting opportunities to talk to the students who specifically choose Guilford and collect some anecdotal and qualitative information about how those students think about their experiences and how they experience being here with us in Guilford.
Yeah, part of it is that I was the only one running the program for many years without any help. I was going to all the PPTs. I was doing, the whole 9 yards. Then when we got Melissa, that really helped. But then the state started requiring more information all the time. So I have to really look at that again, because now I finally got a secretary as of last year. So now we can start processing more to get information that you're looking for.
I think it's an exciting opportunity.
Absolutely.
You did mention special education. I know that there has been some questions about special education costs and how that works. So these students will be invited to join us in first grade. So essentially, at the really simplest and highest level, if students going through this program are identified as having special education needs, we meet those needs here in Guilford. Mr. Scanziano would be responsible for tracking the cost of that, and that cost would then be billed back to New Haven specifically, individually, and completely. There might be some negotiation that goes on back and forth. So Mr. Scanziano might have to talk to the special education director in New Haven, but New Haven remains responsible for the special education costs that would be incurred by these students. And we would work that out directly with New Haven annually.
Is that outplacement as well?
Yes.
Yep.
And with the lottery, we don't know if the student is special ed or not. It's a blind lottery. When we do the lottery, the only thing that goes in there is the student's grade level, student's name, and what the 3 choices are. That's all we see during the lottery process, and it's an electronic lottery. So when we first started doing the open choice program, I used to write up little cards for every student, and we literally had a bingo bin, and that's how we did it for probably the first 5 years of the program, until we finally invested into an electronic lottery system.
But those costs are borne by New Haven. I'm sorry, I'm calling on people. today.
No.
But,
you're
well, I-
fine.
born by New Haven, but that said, I have to bring up what's happened in Woodbridge. Where I know right now there is a discrepancy or a disagreement about those charges and yeah, I just am curious about that process and, you know, what the expected resolution is there. Reading, it almost appeared that there was not an accusation, but something implied that there were more children with special needs somehow, even though it is a choice, like a randomized lottery, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So, you know, our parents, if a child has a special need, is that disclosed when they enter the lottery, or there's no?
Okay, so what happens with that is some parents will report every detail. Some parents won't. Some families feel that if they report, their child will not get in, even though we stress all the time, this is a blind lottery. That is not part of, you know, sometimes there are more special ed students in specific districts because families hear, oh my God, this district is fantastic with their special ed. So they tend to apply to that district more than others. Sometimes it's not always the case. But it's, you know, that's not anything that we can control here at Choice.
The lottery is self-selecting, so right off the bat, you know that there are engaged parents who are advocating for their children and making with the transportation what is going to be a more complicated and difficult choice for their kids. And you get to list your 3 preference of districts. So if there are parents who heard that Guilford does a great job supporting special education students, you could assume that that self-selecting group might target Guilford for that reason.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get in either, because it's a lottery and we always get more applications than we do openings. Especially for certain grades. So, you know, it's basically the luck of the draw for the parents. Because I'm constantly getting calls from families saying, what do you think my chances are? And I tell them, I don't know. It depends on how many applications I get. You know, how many openings I get in this grade that you're looking for, you know, what districts you're applying for. So
if it's a blind lottery, how do you make the decision?
the lottery is run, they get assigned a lottery number. And by that lottery number, the lowest number goes first, you know, let's say. Bill Grimm. He applied for Cheshire, Branford, and Guilford. So he's number 1 pick. Okay, so we get him into Cheshire. That was his first choice. The second child gets pulled up. He applied for Cheshire, Guilford, and Branford. So Cheshire, maybe we only got 1 seat. So, okay, that seat was filled already. We go to the next seat. He applied for Branford next. We place him in Branford. You know,
So using that method, it doesn't matter if they disclose an issue or not, it won't matter.
it won't matter because we don't see that. We don't see that special ed status at all, if there is one.
However, remember, as we report seats available, that is something that we could take into consideration in-house before making seats available. So let's say that we're looking at 2 kindergarten classes moving into 1st grade and 2 of our local elementary schools. One of them has just absolute large enrollment in kindergarten. We wouldn't offer seats there because they're at what we consider to be a comfortable class size. A neighboring school might have lower class sizes, but is a class that is particularly challenging because of special education needs already identified locally. That principal and I would have that conversation, and we might not offer seats, even though the classes are smaller, we might not choose to offer seats there because the special ed load was already at the level that our case managers were able to cover, so we wouldn't offer seats in that one either. It would be space, and then when we're looking at 5th grade, Doug and I would be having those same conversations looking at the upcoming 4th grade. Do we have capacity, both in space and in special ed supports, to open seats at that fifth grade level? If there was a year that we had a bubble class moving through or particularly heavy special ed needs, once again, we wouldn't add staff to offer fifth grade seats. In that year, we might choose not to offer any because we were watching one of those bubble classes move through.
What if a child is selected, they go to one district and then a few years later, the parents want to change that district? Are they allowed to do so? And
That does happen. They would enter the lottery again. And since they've already received a seat from us, they would go to the end of the waiting list. But that's the only fair way to do it because they already have a seat with the program. So we want to encourage other families to, participate in the program.
From our perspective, once a child is in and is a Guilford student, they are a Guilford student unless they move out of New Haven and therefore out of the program, or the parent chooses to withdraw. And I think there is a certain amount of attrition in the program. I think at times, again, the distance or the challenges sort of add up, and there is an attrition factor that does apply. We would have the opportunity to be responsive of that when we open seats again in 5 and in 9, but parents can withdraw from the program. Once the students in Guilford, we would consider them our student unless one of those changes occurred.
When there's a disagreement about cost, how is it managed?
It's handled
Is New Haven
between the
write
district
special
and New Haven.
legislation that says we don't have to pay Guilford a certain amount of money?
That's handled right between Guilford and New Haven at that point. Open choice.
Stay out of it.
It has to stay out of it. We can't go with, we can't represent either district. It has gone to the State Department of Ed with Woodbridge. It has gone to the State Department of Ed. And some districts, they don't even bill New Haven. They eat the cost. Some districts want to get paid, and I don't blame them. But that's definitely handled between the two districts.
So can I ask you, had said, like the example of the transportation where you would apply for additional relief from the state. There's not that option then for the host districts to also apply to the state for. relief?
No,
Okay.
no.
No, but the important part there is that when
Yes.
you come up short on transportation, that's your shortage. It's not.
Right.
The participating districts are never billed to kick in to cover the shortfall.
No. Transportation it's its whole separate budget.
And as we've started to talk about this, and we, the board, have not been involved in yet in very in-depth conversations, but the last time we did talk, one of the questions came up about thinking about how many seats you might want to open and making sure, for instance, that we didn't necessarily put a child alone in a classroom, but with group of kids, et cetera. As I heard you speaking, I heard you mention, I might have the school district on that, there's one opening at this school this year, and I'm recognizing, of course, that that's a new opening, right? There
Yes.
may be returning
All those were
students.
new openings.
Right, but does your organization have kind of guidelines around, I don't know, a minimum number you'd want in a classroom, for instance, or do you really leave those kinds of choices up to the receiving district on how to approach supporting kids coming in?
Right, it is definitely up to the receiving district. That's why some districts choose not to participate.
Right.
Some districts feel that to reduce the racial isolation, they like to spread, like they might give us, let's say 5 kindergarten seats. They like to put the kids in different classrooms. Some districts like to keep like 2 kids in one classroom, 2 kids in another, at least they see somebody familiar.
Right.
Or that somebody that looks like them. it's all up to the district.
So
on
those
how
are
they
kind of
wanna handle it.
thoughtful choices we'll want to make ourselves,
Mhm.
but there aren't necessarily guiding principles that you're requesting of us.
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no.
But important to the conversations that we will have with other communities and other principals who have hosted students in the past between when this board approves, should you choose to approve this, and February, next February, when we would be reporting those seats out.
Right.
It's exactly one of the reasons in some of the work that is on our list to do. And
Right.
what I mean when I say going slowly, doing it right.
Oh, I
doing
think
it
that's
well.
so important. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we are prepared to support kids coming in, that
Yeah.
we're not thinking it's as easy as opening a door.
No, there will be challenges, I'll be honest, there will be some challenges, kids sometimes could be. Not mean, but they see. Other kids of different races and economic statuses and stuff like that, and, it's. It could be a hard transition, but if the district handles it well. It could be. A real nice transition for the kids,
Yeah,
both
I
in
think,
district and.
right.
out of
I mean, I
district
think we
kids.
recognize that this can be a stressful situation for the youth involved. So we would want to do that
And it's stressful on the family. You figure you put your child on bus for,
Oh,
an hour and a
absolutely.
half, 2 hours.
to a location that is different than one you're near.
Different,
Absolutely.
yeah. So,
I think our support would be to help connect Guilford with some of those districts, schools. The teachers, administrators, just to kind of help answer some of those questions, like what are the real logistics of bringing a student, bringing a family in.
Yeah.
And
My
we-
experience was the kids do great.
Mhm.
The kids are just students, right? So it's one of the challenges is helping the family become part of the school community.
Part of the community.
Because they can't necessarily make it to back to school nights and those sorts of things. And I know in East Haven, we had to, or we chose to provide, we set aside some money in a budget for transportation for the families to be able to come to school events and things like that. And also to pick up at the elementary level where there's not the after school transportation to participate in enrichment activities after school.
Mhm.
To build in some of that transportation cost as well.
and now it's gotten a little bit easier too with Zoom. Since the pandemic, one of the positive things that came out of it is people are used to. Doing Zoom meetings now, so you could, get in touch with parents that way, to hold, parent teacher conference if the parent can't make it in. So it's, there's different tools out there that we could definitely help you with. Melissa Allers, who was unable to make it tonight, is our open choice liaison, and she's really good at connecting students, families, schools, principals, districts, to all work together for the benefit of the child.
We plan on creating a parent network for those parents who are part of that, and we plan on using Dr. Harrison to be, right, we've already got a family liaison position that we're building in district. It's a perfect responsibility to become part of that as well, so that he would become a contact, and we could have quarterly or regular opportunities, whether they're Zoom or in person, for those parents to have a built-in support network and a built-in contact in addition to a building level principal that they have that they could go to.
and I'm trying to recall, when I was at Deer Run in East Haven and we. Each year, we either accepted one or two. I don't think we ever accepted more than two. And we were similar size to our, the Guilford Elementary Schools where you had 2 or 3 sections of a kindergarten class. And I think I tended to place them in different classes, just because I think that the kids needed to build independence as well, from each other if they either knew each other or They were spending so much time on the bus together that they had kind of a separate place as well, so.
But our initial thinking is we will not offer any individual slots at a school. So even though students,
Oh, right.
right, and quite honestly, I'm thinking of my twins, right? I never wanted my twins to be in the same classroom together. But I don't think we would ever offer a single seat at one of the 4 elementary schools. It would always be multiple seats per school.
Mhm.
And then we think really thoughtfully about what to do with classroom. And remember, that's not an absolute. What the class distribution is in first grade
Right.
won't be the same in second, third, and fourth. Principals shuffle up those classroom mixes every year. And so it could be very different by the time the students are established and in third and fourth grade compared to what they come into in first grade.
And we offer to go to the individual schools where students are attending, to go to one of their staff meetings and present open choice and what it is and how it works. And because, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions that, oh, you just place those special ed students, or you just place these kids that don't, you know, aren't doing well, or there's a lot of misconceptions like that. And, you know, we talk to the staff, what the program is and how it works. So everybody has an understanding.
Or did you?
Sorry,
go ahead.
yeah,
No,
I
no,
apologize for coming a little late, so you might have answered these questions. I have two. One is around transportation for after-school activities for sports. Did you guys talk about that? And
Yes.
that's all accommodated for it, so the students aren't hindered from being in the school play or.
It sounds like it's a combination of a late bus and then for things past 4:30, kind of thinking outside the box.
Yeah, okay, good, because I would never want to think that they couldn't participate in everything that
Right.
a
So,
student living in this community could do.
yes, so what it is like, club. If students wanted to stay after school for clubs, but when clubs get out, usually, you know, 3:00, 3:30, they might have to wait for that 4:30 bus. If you're in sports, it might end at 5. So they would have to
Yeah, no,
leave
that
that
makes sense.
activity by 4:30 or be waiting for the bus at 4:30.
And then the other question I had, just looking at this chart is, do we have any historical data to show the trajectory of these students? Like, maybe if we're going back to 98, just to see their success and to kind of be able to measure that. So we did, I'm asking questions, I've already been answered.
Yeah.
They don't have.
They don't have.
We don't have it. The only
Okay.
thing that we have is, we tried collecting it for a couple of years. And the students and families are so transient that, you know, out of 45, 50 that I mail out, I get maybe 4 or 5 responses. But we do hear from some families, because, you know, some of the families I've dealt with for 12 years. And they're so proud, you know, I did say at the beginning that we had one graduate as a lawyer, we had another one as a doctor, and then there's, you know, a lot of nurses and stuff like that. There's a lot of people want to go into the military, so.
You know, and I don't know if you know this, but what I can look into is whether CREC has data that we could use. They're a much larger, a much bigger program with much greater resource. I'm happy to reach out and see if they've done something that we could look at that would, you know, the Farmington Valley data would give us an idea if they've been able to collect it and pull it together. I'd be happy to reach out and see if they've
And I
got
think
something.
that eventually down the line, right? The students who are part of the open choice program that graduate from Guilford High School, they become part of your data.
That's right.
You track as well.
Right.
And I know even at that level, when they move on, it's tough to keep track of them. So, and to kind of reconnect with them and find out how they're doing 6 years after they graduate high school and that sort of
Right.
thing.
It's funny because a lot of the kids that have graduated or students that have graduated from the program now have their kids in the program. So that's really nice to see.
Mhm.
Yes, I have a question for you, Paul, really just about, you know, our district itself. We just had, you know, as you know, a recent meeting with our educators and spoke with them. And I know the pandemic is technically winding down, but it seems like the impacts and the effects with our students and, you know, are far from over. And so I guess my only question is, you know, are the teachers part of these discussions? Are they aware of this? Are they providing any, are they given an outlet to ask questions and get feedback? And, how do you envision kind of supporting them over this next year as we transition?
Yeah, so the quick answer to the first part is, have they been involved at scale to date? Quick answer is no. So this meeting is being recorded. We plan on putting this out, and then I plan on putting invitations out to say, please take a look, please let us know, please get your thoughts and feedback back to us so that they can be part of that. The second part, how do we plan on supporting them, is through all of next, right? First with all of next year. We had a meeting with the leadership team a few months back and literally put out 2023 or 2024. The principals were really clear that 2024 is the much better timeline. We need to take not half a school year. We need to take a full school year. So, right, we will actually know what schools we're sort of circling in on as early as September, and really clearly by October 1st, because the kindergarten sections will be set. So we need to make sure that we're giving principals an opportunity to talk to experienced principals who have done this before, that we're giving classroom teachers an opportunity to talk to classroom teachers who have done this before and can say, it's wonderful, it is good for our kids, and so that they've got time to process and to be prepared to ask their questions. So we'll be building this in as a strand through all of next year's professional development planning, particularly at the middle level. But you also see the middle and high school principals who are here, because we know that in year 2 and then in year 3, we'll be offering seats at those levels as well. So yes, we want to invite them into this conversation with everybody. And then we want to make sure that they've got the time to feel confident and competent and prepared for when those first groups come in. And then again, remember the numbers that we're talking about in year 1. We're probably going to identify 2 or 3 of our 4 elementary schools, and we will probably invite 2 or 3 students into each of those settings. So I think we're talking about 5 to 9 families next year that we might be inviting to join us. It could even be smaller than that. Doing a really good job supporting those families over year 1, because nothing develops confidence and competence like early successes. And so there's a real logic to why we're not opening up grade 1 and grade 5 and grade 9 all in the first year. We will have capacity. We'll have seats in 5 and 9. I just don't think we want to develop those early successes and get the youngest kids in who will have the opportunity to be elementary and middle and high school students with us before they graduate. I hope that answers
Yeah,
it.
that's great.
And it's really important to support the teachers.
Yep.
Because they want to have a good feeling that they're meeting the needs of the students that are coming in from New Haven, but also the class as a whole. So it's important. One of the questions we dealt with it when I was in East Haven was what, and I'm gonna start asking Lynn questions so that she can hear the questions that I had. So, but one of the questions that always came up, and it occurred, was what if a child gets sick during the day? So I'm gonna turn that over to Lynn.
Okay, so at that point, it's the parent's responsibility. We can't transport a sick child. So we always ask for emergency contacts for the families. So in case of that situation, the child gets suspended from school. Again, it's the parent's responsibility to pick up that child that got suspended.
So I know we tried to have as many contacts, kind of emergency contacts from the family. Because sometimes we had to go down 3 or 4 deep to try and get in touch with somebody to come and pick a child up.
So
And it was often delayed, right? Because you're not just around the corner. So.
And so what we do is when we send out the acceptance form, when we accept the child, and every year for the existing kids, we also send out a form asking for new contact information, asking if their phone numbers and addresses changed, it's a whole verification form that they have to fill out. And then we do it again towards the end of October to see if there's been any changes, and you'd be surprised at how many changes that I get even within the April timeline when they have to return the form to October. There's multiple changes. We always stress to the families and the program that they contact us with any updates, and they also contact the school. School number one, obviously, because they're dealing with the child, but we also want the information, so if something happens on the bus or anything like that, you know, we have all the information and we can get in touch with families right away. Every time there, or not every time, anytime there's a bus accident, we contact the superintendent, we contact the school. If it happens on the way into school, we make sure that the nurse checks the kids out as soon as they come in. And we contact the parents at any time there's an accident that happens, no matter how minor.
The best thing that we have going for us is that ACES has been doing this since '98, and that this year, in this current school year today, there are 377 students participating in this program. We're not creating anything new here. We are borrowing and collecting the best ideas and the most successful practices that have been in place and that other people have figured out since '98, and making sure that we bring those to bear to support our teachers who will be supporting the students to take advantage of this opportunity.
More
Next
questions for you?
question.
Oh, yeah. So then always had situations either, and it's kind of a dual question, but if a child goes home on the bus regular time, but there's nobody at home, what happens? And then there's always, were sometimes issues with inclement weather. New Haven was closed or
Oh.
dismissed early and
Right, right, right.
East Haven didn't, or, you know, in those sorts of situations, one's closed, one's not, you know, how does that work?
Okay, so for inclement weather, if New Haven closes, there's no buses that come out of New Haven. So that the students would not be coming to Guilford that day. If they dismiss early, we would call the individual school and say, you have to have the child ready by your normal early dismissal time. So if you dismiss at 1:10, that would be the time that we pick up the students, even though the rest of your students are staying for the
Full
whole day. We would, because if it's too dangerous to transport within New Haven, we want to make sure that those
Oh,
kids
we
get
shut
home
down,
safe.
there's just a.
Thanks, Joel.
Just kidding.
For
Sorry, just kidding.
for holidays and vacations, the students will get transportation. So if New Haven is closed for a holiday or for vacation and you're open, they will be provided transportation to your district. Some families don't always send their kids because, especially if they're the older kids in the family, they sometimes have to watch the younger kids. But for the most part, the kids do attend. I mean, it's very rare. It's, you know, one here and one there that happens with. So, yeah, so vacations and holidays, that's not an issue at all. If there's a delay in New Haven and there's no delay in Guilford, the kids will be delayed coming into school. Again, if it's too dangerous to transport. If Guilford is delayed, obviously, we'll hold the kids in New Haven until school starts.
And then if we have an early dismissal day, but other schools you're transporting don't.
We
we're
would bring
holding
them,
the kids. Oh, no, you're getting,
we pick them up at the early dismissal time.
these are small things we could figure out anyway, but.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're closed, we ask board members to come in and.
What was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
If the student's going home at the regular time, but there's no one at home when.
Okay.
Right, so if that happened in Guilford, the students would be brought back to the local school.
Right.
Right.
If the school is close enough, we do bring them back. If they're not close enough, we start scrambling for emergency contacts. We've had instances where we could not get in touch with anyone. We've brought them back to base a couple times, but they really don't want the kids there. So we've had to have, I think twice, we've had to actually bring them to the New Haven Police Station, which we really don't want to do that. It upsets the child tremendously,
Yep.
especially the younger kids. So we do due diligence and try to get, somebody for the child. You know, we had a case where it was a single mom and she was in the hospital. She had gotten in an accident, she was in the hospital, didn't have any contacts. But we tracked down somebody, you know, an aunt. So sometimes it takes us, you know, 20 minutes, half hour to track somebody down, but we try our best to
Yeah, and that's
get a
what
family
it's,
member
you
at
know,
least.
because
Or,
ultimately you need somebody on that emergency contact, list,
Yeah.
right? And I had, and it happens with our magnet schools too.
Mhm.
So I was covering at one of our magnet schools, and schools in North Haven, but we have students from Waterbury. So,
Right.
you know, there's transportation going back and forth. The bus got all the way back up to Waterbury. There was nobody home. There was, I think, an uncle or something who wasn't on the emergency list. The bus had to come all the way back. The uncle followed the bus. Transportation called me, just to be ready, you know, for it. But in the meantime, had spoken with the parent and got the verbal okay for, and checked IDs and things like that. So, but, luckily it was resolved and, you know, no one was upset about it. It's just the way that it is, right, to be safe. So, but those things will happen.
Yeah.
From time to time.
they're far and few between though, it's.
Well, absolutely.
No, but right, but they're the
It seemed to
things,
happen
they're
when
the
I'm
things.
covering there. So,
When you're on, when you're
Yeah.
no, those are the things that aren't gonna, I imagine, gonna be at the top of our list right away that we're thinking about, but we're gonna need to know about.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Sure.
Other questions?
Does anybody else?
So you said that you were the only person running this for a long time, and now you have one other person,
Yes,
and
And a clerical position.
and a clerical right now, yes.
do you have succession and redundancy set up? You're a key person, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a very different program were you to win the lottery and take off or retire or whatever. Is there a plan in place for that? It's a pretty big deal.
Right now, Melissa Allers, who's the family liaison, knows a good part of my job. Not the state reporting and stuff like that, but anything to do with students in the schools, we communicate all the time on a daily basis. So when I'm out, I had to take a 6-week medical leave 4 years ago, and she filled in for me without a problem. Of course, you know, not doing the state reporting and stuff, but everything else got handled. And then there's my whole staff consists of myself, Melissa, who's the open choice liaison. Then I have Margie Rivera, who does the magnet school parent choice program, but she pitches in whenever needed. We have Olga Sanchez, who does our regional special ed transportation. She knows quite a bit about open choice because she worked in New Haven for, I think it was almost 20 years, in their open choice registration office. So she knows a lot of the New Haven families personally. And she's always willing to back up wherever needed. And then last year we were able to hire a secretary. She's, you know, I brought her up to speed on just about everything with open choice at this point.
And on the same note, thank you for all that you've done by yourself. Congratulations.
Thank you.
To that note, Dr. Freeman, would we have someone internally that would be a liaison to the program besides you?
Yeah, at this point, we expect that the contracted position around the equity family liaison would be directly involved in this program as well. So we may have to look at the hour allocation for that position. Again, there's an exponential growth here. So yes, I expect that it would be myself, Dr. Harrison, and then building principals obviously would have a significant role in the actual life of the students. And then Mr. Scanziano is going to have a role in that special education component. You did notice in the presentation, we would host the PPTs locally, but Melissa would attend those PPTs on behalf of ACES and New Haven, quite honestly. So that, right?
Well, New Haven also gets invited. to
Yes,
all the
and then New
meetings.
Haven has an opportunity to attend as well.
Yeah, so when the PPT invites go out, it would be, for Melissa and whoever the, special ed contact person that works specifically with open choice, from New Haven. And, you know, we have a year out, so I don't know if it will be the same person, as it is currently, but there's also a New Haven representative that tries to attend all the meetings.
And then again, the students, once they enroll, are our students. So just as there is a building and then district-wide team around every kid with a Guilford address, those students would have those same layers of support built in because of their status as students, separate and apart from the program. But the program would have the supports that I mentioned.
Excellent. Any questions before we?
I
Thank
have
you, Lynn.
included my business card and all the,
Wonderful.
green folders here, and Melissa's, so if anybody has any questions. I don't know if you want to go through Dr. Freeman or.
Yeah, we would probably just to save you, probably go through Dr. Freeman, but really appreciate it. We'll no doubt be reaching out to you and Mr. Grimm, who we know already. As we're really working on thinking about this.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for your
Thank you.
time.
Yeah.
And then again,
And
plan on
I plan
bringing,
on being here for at least 3 more years, so. That I can't promise anything.
we plan on bringing this forward again, very likely in the same ways that we bring policy forward. Probably again at your next regular meeting for discussion at a regular business meeting, followed by again at your June meeting where we would ask for your action if we feel ready to ask for this board to take action and approve this moving forward. So, right, really gives sort of 3 public opportunities to talk about it at board meetings, as well as we have every intention of posting tonight's conversation on our YouTube channel for community to watch as well.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you,
Appreciate
Bill.
coming. All right. So the board only has one other item tonight, which is to act on submission of the IDEA grant. The exhibit was included in the material sent to us. So this is the Special Education Entitlement Grant Programs with 2 different allocations, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Section 611 funds, a grant to provide additional excess costs associated with the provision of special education and related services to eligible children ages 3 to 22, $725,396 to provide additional instructional and related services staff, professional development supplies, and technical assistance in data collection and analysis to monitor programs and progress for special needs students. And then a grant section 619 funds to provide additional support associated with the provision of preschool special education associated with the provision, for preschool special education children 3 to 5, an allocation of $21,938 to provide additional staff in speech language and adaptive physical education for preschool programming. The total application is $747,334. Do you have anything to add to this as we are considering this?
This is an annual approval
Right.
that we ask of the board each year. In order for us to receive these federal funds, we need to report how they will be spent. So we do this each year. This is $747,000 that comes into the district that supports the work that we do. We ask for your approval every year so that we can receive those funds. Jason, is there anything that you would add to that explanation?
I just have a question. At the top, it says
I was just gonna
2023
say
to
it's
25.
years. So
Is that a
it's-
typo?
It's a 3-year overlapping grant, so
Okay.
every year we do it, and the funds are then allocated each year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions
That
about?
was my question.
It's a good question.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the request or what are we
We're
approving?
approving the grant application. We cannot
Okay.
submit it without.
That's what I
board
thought. I thought it was an application. Okay, so I'm asking for a motion to approve the application.
I'm sorry, Jason.
The grant is due May 4th. So Linda and I are about 90% completed, so we can't hit the submit button without the.
Without us.
Without your approval.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I hear no
Second.
motion, more a second, further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that's everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll
Um,
just add that we receive those dollars every year and that's exciting, but I'll also remind everybody to please take a look at the newsletter that you received earlier today at the 1.2 million that we received specifically this year around HVAC improvements that are happening
great.
here in Guilford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's most exciting about that is that those are projects that this community had already approved, work that is essentially already complete. And we were able to receive the $1.2 million in state funds because the state opened up and made those available, not just for future projects, but retroactively. So over the last 10 years, this community has invested about $11 million in HVAC air quality in our buildings. The state just reimbursed us essentially or kept us from having to bond about 10% of that investment. That's really exciting. And we really appreciate the state, the executive branch, and then our advocates in Hartford who made sure that that happened. And so really exciting, and I encourage everybody to take a look at the press release that went out.
all right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. John's ready.
Favorite motion of the night.
Second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.